What's going on, fam? We're over here in Walmart, Cleveland, Texas. Today we're going to be talking about the BARF diet. We're going to make it easy for you. We're going to do a couple of recipes. We're going to make it happen in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. As you can see, these are some California mandarins. They're great to go with the BARF diet as far as the fruit requirement for your dogs. If you notice, look at the size of these mandarins. They're really tiny, and so it fits that 5% that you need for the BARF diet. There's many types of vegetables that you can give your dogs. I prefer to give them green beans and carrots. For me, that's like the max for them. One of the organs you're going to be using is going to be liver. As you can see here, for $2.42 you get a pound worth of beef liver, not badly priced. But you got to make sure you don't give this in too large amounts. We'll get a little bit into that later. One of my best friends for the BARF diet is strictly chicken. I mean, I feed it to them, you know, bone and all, raw. It gives them the right proportions of calcium, phosphorus, protein. If you only feed protein diet, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to deplete calcium stores, and therefore you got to feed calcium together with phosphorus in order so you don't have any type of depletion, because they work hand in hand. Now, as you can see, this is the area where they keep the ground beef, and due to COVID, there's not much around at this time. But with that being said, I've been asked in the past if I feed exclusively 95% lean ground beef, and my answer is no. Like I said on the podcast, I also say it here, I usually get the 80-20, but you got to be careful as to what you're mixing, because you don't want to give your dog too much fat. Due to the fact that they don't have the chicken liver, we're going to go with the beef liver, but like I said before, I usually prefer the chicken. It's just my personal preference. You could use either or. Just make sure you use the right amounts. For those of you that have been watching our videos on diets that I posted in the past, you already know this is my secret weapon right here, sauerkraut. It's full of probiotics, goes straight into the dog's gut, allows it to consume most of its food and nutrients. And here's a nice little secret for all you bully owners. You get a 10-pound bag, chicken quarters. Look at that price, $5.24. Can't beat it, fam. $5.24. 10 pounds. Buy yourself a good, I don't know, 8-9 bags, and you're set for quite a while. The BARF diet does call for small amounts of grain. I like to supplement that, or not supplement, actually replace with oatmeal, because oatmeal is lower on the glycemic index. So another type of organ meat that we're going to be giving them is going to be kidneys, as you can see. I'm going to go ahead and take 2 packs. We got quite a few dogs. So kidneys. All right. Let's see what else. You well know we got to be giving them anywhere between 12 and 15% bone. This not only does it have bone, but it also has chondroitin and glucosamine, which is really good for the joints. For those of you that have dogs with weak pasterns, that you're working on strengthening the pasterns, this is something I strongly recommend. All right, fam, we just made it home. We have all the ingredients. We're also going to throw in a couple of treats that we do for our dogs, and we're going to set up. So let's get to it. Now, you have to wait until yours freezes, okay? This one's for me. Yours is up in the fridge, okay? All right, fam, the BARF diet that we use in our kennel tends to 75% of meat, okay, 15 to 12% of bone. We then have 5% organ meat, 5% fruit and vegetables, no more than that. So we're going to be doing 3 different recipes. First recipe we're going to be talking about is going to be for puppies. So let me just move this around here. And don't worry, we're going to be cutting everything nice and clean for you so you can see how it is that we put it together. Now, if you notice, I got some chicken feet here, okay? The reason I have chicken feet here is that for adult dogs, you got to make sure that you're feeding bone along with meat. And that has to do because the meat has a lot more calcium than it does phosphorus. If you only feed a dog meat, what ends up happening is you deplete their phosphorus levels. And the way you maintain them is with bone. So that would be for an adult. But since we're talking about puppies, what we're going to be feeding puppies is going to be mainly ground beef. I normally don't like to feed a chicken quarter to a puppy until they're about 3 to 4 months old, and they show me that they're able to, you know, break down the bone and able to swallow without any problems. Once we get to that point, then we'll be feeding them more of the chicken quarters and the chicken feet and everything else. I make sure I have a calculator. This particular one is hairtoday.com, and pretty much what you do is you go in there and you punch in the weight of your pup. In this case, we're going to be putting in our female Kennel. She's 53 pounds. I go ahead and do that, and as you can see here, it tells you you're going to feed her 1.06 pounds per day, meaning 0.53 pounds or 8.48 ounces per meal. This allows me to go ahead and weight whatever it is that I'm going to be feeding my pup and knowing exactly where I'm getting at. Now you got to keep in mind, you want to be able to feed them in between 2 and 4%. Now 2 to 3%, mainly 3% is to maintain weight. I have found that at 2%, you start dropping weight slightly. At 4%, you start gaining weight slightly. And you want to go ahead, once you have that amount, you want to go ahead and divide it in two, and you want to give half of that meal in the morning and the other half in the afternoon. All right, so basically we're going to be breaking down 3 different recipes. The first recipe we're going to be doing is for pups. You can go to many calculators that are out there. The main one that I go to is hairtoday.com. That's the one I'm using. And pretty much you put in the weight of your pup, 53 pounds. And what I like to do is I'll go ahead and put it at 3% if I want the pup to maintain weight. If I need for the pup to gain weight, I will go ahead and set it at 4% of the body weight. And if I need the pup to lose weight, I'll put it down to 2% of the body weight. Now, don't get too carried away with that, but in a sense, if you're starting to notice that your dog, or I'm sorry, your puppy is starting to have, say, east-west, pasterns are coming down, it's got too much weight, you might want to do this, but intermittently, meaning that if you've been feeding 3%, you could feed 3% on an MWF schedule, meaning Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then every other day in between you could feed at 2%, and the same could be said vice versa. So again, in this particular scenario, we're feeding my pup Kennel. She's 53 pounds. As you can see here, it's saying that in total I should be feeding 1.59 pounds. In other words, 25.44 ounces per day. When you divide it by 2, you get 0.8 pounds or 12.72 ounces per meal. And that's important because then I'm going to be using my weight here, and that's how I'm going to be able to tell what it is in amounts when I'm going to be feeding my pup. So let's get to it. So pretty much, how do we counter not being able to regulate a pup's calcium or phosphorus level if we're only feeding ground beef when they're small? It's rather simple. That's the reason us breeders use eggs. This has the perfect proportion of phosphorus and calcium that a pup needs, and all you got to do is crack it and feed it to them with the shell and everything, okay? So that's exactly what we're going to start out our little diet with. We're going to go ahead and start out with the egg. We're going to go ahead and crush, and don't worry about it, we're going to be mixing all this together, so there's no big deal. So pretty much we're going to mix the egg with the ground beef. Now based on the site and the calculation on a 53-pound female, I'm going to be feeding her 10.17 ounces of meat daily. Now you guessed it, egg is protein, therefore I'm going to go ahead and mix it with the ground beef, and I'm going to be weighing that to see if it's giving me that amount. All right, and it's actually a little bit short of that. So let me go ahead out a little bit. Now, if you don't get the exact number, it's not the end of the world, fam, but you definitely want to be able to get as close to it as possible, okay? So there we go. Okay, so that's the amount of meat that we need. Now, I'm going to show you a real quick calculation you could do. It's the way I do it. If in total we're going to be feeding 12.5 ounces, then pretty much I already know that my organ meat is 5% and 5% of fruits and vegetables. So I take 10% of that, So we have 1.2 ounces, and I divide that in half to 0.6 ounces, and that's what I'm gonna have to cut up of that kidney to be able to feed this puppy. And then we're gonna divvy that meal up in half. So just watch me do it. So keep in mind, we're gonna go ahead and we need 0.6 of organ meat, okay? 0.6. Now I'm gonna cut up a little bit more than I will need for this pup, only because I will be feeding other dogs. But for this pup, all I really need is 0.6 ounce, which really is not that much, fam. I mean, if you really think about it, we're talking about basically half an ounce. I'm guessing something like this. And again, there you go. It's actually right at half, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it this other little smidget. And there you go. There's your 0.6 of an ounce, okay? Then, remember I said, if we're dealing with a total of 12.5, 10% of that is 1.2. We just gave 0.6 of organ meat. We're now gonna give 0.6 of okra, okay? Or not just okra, but vegetables in general. So we're gonna go ahead and throw okra up in there. And I'm over here weighing as I'm doing it. Throw some little okra up in there. Throw some green beans up in there. Just so that we can get to that 0.6 ounce mark, okay? Once we get to that 0.6 ounce mark, we're good. Okay, you don't want to feed too much raw vegetables to your dogs, because otherwise you're going to be having yourself a pretty gassy dog, okay? So this right here, see? All right, we're a hair under. Here's where your carrot comes in, okay? Just a smidgen of carrot, just enough to get you to that 0.6, and we're there, I want to say. And yes, we are. So now that I've done all that, here's where the QBN twist comes in, okay? Now, I'm gonna wash my hands real quick, and I'm gonna come back, and we're gonna be adding some sauerkraut and turmeric, okay? Now, some of you are gonna think and say that the sauerkraut is vegetables, that it should be calculated as such. I'm not gonna calculate it as such, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I'm not feeding sauerkraut to my dogs as a vegetable serving. I'm actually feeding them the sauerkraut as a probiotic. Probiotics is nothing more than bacteria that's going to help the dog break down the raw foods, and so it can absorb its nutrients as much as possible. Not to mention the fact that sauerkraut also has prebiotics, okay? And that's something that you really want, because it helps to break down from the minute that the pups are in a full spoonful. Every time my dogs are eating raw, we're dealing with a puppy here. Something like this, about half a spoonful with a lot of that little sauce on there. Just throw it in there. It's gonna help the dog as far as breaking down the foods. And then this other little magic thing that I have is turmeric. Make sure you don't give too much of it. Turmeric is an anti-inflammatory. Just a smidgen is good right there, okay? And trust me, your dog is gonna thank you for it in the long run, because it's gonna be very helpful for its health. It's gonna keep any type of inflammation that they have in the body is actually gonna keep it down, and it's gonna make them flow a lot better. The last thing I will add is a pinch of cinnamon. Just plain old cinnamon. I don't want any type of sugars or anything in there. And the reason that I add this is because when puppies are growing, insulin plays a vital role as far as their growth, okay? IGF-1 is their growth factor. It gets stimulated whenever you add a little bit of cinnamon, because it keeps the insulin from having to stop assisting in the growth. and having to go break down foods, okay? Because you have not break down foods, but lower blood sugar in the dog's blood. So in order to be able to counter that, you want to be able to add a pinch, just a little pinch of cinnamon, not too much. There you go, just a pinch. And that right there, believe it or not, is going to stimulate your puppy's growth, and not to the point where they're going to be overgrown. But what it does is, again, it kind of balances out the hormones and tells the insulin, listen, you ain't got to worry about keeping the blood sugar in check because the cinnamon already did it. You could go help out as far as the growth factor, the IGF-1. Now the last thing I'm going to add is going to be a spoonful or thereabouts of oatmeal, okay? Not much more than that. All right? And that's pretty much what we're going to be serving our pup. So now we're just going to move on to the other two recipes, and then we're just going to feed them all together. As you can see, we have a visitor, and she already knows what time it is. So she's just supervising, making sure I'm getting it right. So our next recipe is going to be for Power. He's 102 pounds. I've already done the measurements. It comes out to a total of 8 sauerkraut. Again, we're going to give him a good spoonful. Make sure we get all the juices up in there. Okay, and again, that's for the probiotic. It's going to help our dogs digest. We're going to do a pinch cinnamon. There it is. And we're going to do, again, our pinch of turmeric. Okay, there it is. And we're going to go ahead and give them, you can give them 2 spoonfuls if you like, of oatmeal. Now keep in mind the cinnamon is countering the oatmeal. The oatmeal already is low glycemic to begin with. Okay, so if you want to do a spoonful and a half to 2, that's fine. It's more than enough. You want to do it with rice, you can. Any combination thereof. And pretty much this is what Power is going to be getting right now as far as our BARF QBN diet with a twist. All right. I was just kidding last time. Here we go. The next meal plan that we're going to be doing, or the next recipe, it's going to be for Latessa. She's 95 pounds, anywhere between 95 and 98. So I'm going to put 95 pounds at 3%. That's 285 pounds per day, 45 ounces. That's 1.43 pounds, or 22.8 or 23 ounces per day. Per meal. So we're going to go ahead and we've already preset the weight. Pre-weighed. So pretty much we're throwing this chicken quarter in there for her. We're going to be throwing this little tidbit of meat in there. Also, we're going to go ahead and give her that 5% of organ meat that she needs. Now I'm going to tell you right now, I normally will give more kidney than I would, say, for example, liver. If I'm giving them liver, like you saw us buy earlier, I would tend to give them just a little bit less, only because for whatever reason it gets my dogs runny, fam. And so, when you're out here dealing with so many dogs and they're a little bit runny, it could just complicate things a little bit. And so therefore, if it's liver, I have a tendency to hold back just a little bit, okay? Not too much, but not to the point where I'm giving them as much of the kidney as I'm giving them. The liver is just packed with nutrients, vitamin A in particular, and that's just gonna, cause all sorts of runniness with your dogs. In order to prevent that, just be cautious with it, and everything will be work itself out just fine. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to be giving Latessa too much carrots, just because I know her. She doesn't necessarily like them too much. She will eat them though. And then that's pretty much, as per BARF diet, that's pretty much how it's going to be rolling for her today. Now, One thing I have forgotten to add, and I got these here on purpose, as you saw us buy them earlier. We have these little mandarins, and I'm not gonna per se give a full mandarin to any one of my dogs, but if you know, mandarins are high in vitamin C, and vitamin C is actually gonna help absorb the foods that our dogs are eating. So, you know, I'll go ahead and kind of break it in half almost, give her that much, give her about that other much over here to Power, and to our puppy over here, we're gonna go ahead and drop that in there, okay? And so pretty much, that sugar that you see me giving them in the fruit is gonna be counteracted by the cinnamon that we're gonna be adding now. That pinch of cinnamon, that's what the cinnamon is all about, fam. It's just to keep everything regulated. There you go. A little smidgen of cinnamon. Not too much now, because if you do give them too much, you're gonna end up causing a little bit of diarrhea. I probably gave her a little too much there of turmeric. Make sure you don't make it too much of a habit. Here you go with your tablespoon of sauerkraut. Get the juices up in there. Next up is going to be our oatmeal, and then we're going to top it all off with our egg, and we're pretty much good to go, fam. That's your BARF diet with a QB&K twist. Go ahead and here you go. There's your 1.5. All right, and then lastly, top it off with our egg. Break it up in there, break them shells up in there, and kind of try, if you can, to mix it all up. And that's good to go. That's QB&K gold right there. And lastly, you do want to feed your dogs fish at least once a week, whether it's salmon, mackerel, sardines. Oily fish will do very good for them because they have omega-3s, omega-6, and it's also going to give them an anti-inflammatory response and keep your dog healthy. And all you got to do is pretty much substitute that ground beef that I was giving them with the salmon, and you're pretty much good to go. If you want to go ahead and substitute the chicken as well, you can. It's just going to be a lot of salmon which you're going to have to be giving to them. But I can tell you right now, my dogs simply love it. I'm going to go ahead and add a little twist to it and cut a little slice here and there and add it to their meal today. Go! Alright, so this is the conclusion of our barf diet video. I hope it's something that you can use for your kennel. If you got to modify it or do little things to it, go right ahead, but try to keep as close to it as possible. You're going to be seeing some very good results. One last thing I wanted to bring up is vitamins. We don't use supplements here at QBN. We do use vitamins. These vitamins, we buy them at Walmart. They run roughly $9 to $10. And trust you me, they give you excellent results. Walmart did not pay me for this commercial, so I must really believe in this product in order to be able to give you guys information on it.